ReZero Web Novel Volume 36. Things are heating up for the inevitable showdown at the Imperial Capital, and we have a little bit of everything in this volume, from Al and Ceci having this strange comedy duo, to what is arguably one of the worst fathers of all time, Rowan. This volume was good, I enjoyed it. I still maintain that, in my opinion, the pacing has improved ever since Arc 7, and to be fair, this volume was significantly shorter than the other ones, with just a little bit under 300 pages. Much like the previous volume though, this very much feels like a setup for what is yet to come, this time from the perspective of those who are in the Imperial Capital. I will say that this volume isn't very eventful, as in not a lot of things happen to move the story forward, but we get to know a lot more about the characters and their motivations, and we set up the obstacles to be overcome by the ReZero Avengers. And speaking of the Avengers, let's start right there with the special assault team that was chosen to take back the Imperial Capital from the zombies. We have Emilia, ooh, we have Garfield, ooh, we have Roswell, ah, we have Olbart, ah, we have Hallibel, oh, we have Beatrice, ooh, we have Subaru, he's the main character, we have Vincent, he's the main character, we have Spica, okay, plot reasons, and then we have Medium, and then we have Jamal. I feel like there's a big dip in quality at the end there. The way we got to this Avengers storyline was a bit convoluted, and in my opinion, the part of the book that I liked the least. They introduced this Muspel plot point, this great spirit that has roots all over Vollachia, and it just feels like something that was just suddenly dropped on the reader and that just came out of nowhere. There was no single line of foreshadowing from Beatrice or Julius or Emilia. Supposedly these spirit roots are all over the place, so they didn't sense anything. And I understand why the author did this, but it still felt a little bit sudden. And in my defense, okay, if there was any lines of foreshadowing that I forgot, my bad, that's on me. I do understand its use, as introducing Muspel as a mana resource makes it so that they just can indiscriminately just march on the Imperial Capital with a big army and just destroy all of the zombies. That would be too easy. And also you have characters like Ceci, who could arguably solo most, if not all, of the Great Disaster by himself. So it's probably better to put some storyline restraints so that characters can't go all out, especially because you have a lot of ridiculously strong characters, namely Ceci, Roswell, Hallibel, even Emilia, she can just freeze the whole place. But I think storyline-wise, it makes sense, but I do hope that the author introduces this Muspel plot point a little bit more smoothly in the light novel. Perhaps a little bit of foreshadowing, a little bit of conversation here and there in the previous volumes is all I'm asking. And speaking of this squad's introduction, I have to once again highlight Otto, who I love so much. He is once again very pragmatic, and he really cares. It comes from a place of love, but once again he goes against the wishes of the Emilia camp. They are a bunch of naive softies, and he is an actually intelligent, practical man who does not want to take unnecessary risks. And yet, because he loves them so much, he does take a personal risk to himself when he sees that there's no turning back, they are going to the capital by themselves. He just says, hey, take Garfield with you, which I have no doubt will also be a plot point from Otto's side. By sending Garfield away to the Imperial Capital, the characters that are left for the defense of Garkla are, well, with the exception of Julius and Goz, and I don't think I'm forgetting anyone, but with the exception of those two, the characters that are left are B tier at best. That is the nicest way I can put it. And so I have no doubt that this will be a very compelling plot point. There will likely be some big bad villain that will be revived as a zombie, and they will need to defend Garkla with the resources that they have, which are unimpressive at best. Also, in case it isn't clear, when I say B tier, I'm speaking of current combat power only. If I'm speaking about characters in general, then obviously everyone knows that Rum is S tier. She is the absolute queen. And if you disagree, do not at me, I do not care. In the prologue at Garkla, we have some compelling interactions, namely the one with Medium. She reveals that she wants to go to the capital as well, to meet with Balleroy, which is predictable, it seems like a very Medium thing to do, but then she drops it on us that she actually wanted to marry Balleroy. So she is in this very strange situation where she is in a love triangle with a lolly dragon and a zombie. Once again, this whole Vollachia saga is kinky, is the best way I can put it. Even more surprising is Vincent, who does not stop her and even says this: "To punish love Anyone who performs such a boorish deed must be miserable. Have we been bamboozled? Is Vincent the hopeless romantic all along? This statement is as shocking as this whole marriage storyline, so I'm looking forward to Vincent's romantic developments with great interest. Another interaction I found very interesting is, and I can't believe I'm saying this, Jamal from harassing Natsumi Schwartz. Hey dog, she's pretty hot, I get you. And just being an overall meathead with a sword, he has once again very basic thinking, but strangely profound, strangely heroic from what I expected from this character. What a thick-headed brat. She can't even stand up or bear any children. If that guy, Todd, ain't here, then there's no man that would take her as a wife. Katya needs the money to live. Jamal fully intends to sacrifice himself for his sister's well-being, and that is honestly very honorable, and it is the way of the Empire that once again really clashes with Subaru's morals. They are way more medieval and brutal than they are in Lugunika or in real-life Japan where Subaru came from, and yet this is the way of life that they have, and for many of them that they have chosen. No one from the Empire really bats an eye at what Jamal is saying, not even Medium, who is the most kind of them all. I love that Jamal is doing his best out of love for his sister in the only way that he knows how, the only way that he was taught how. And once again, Subaru declares very proudly that he will not let it happen. And we get once again into this recurring theme that was called out by Todd in the first volume of this arc, where Subaru arbitrarily decides who gets to live and who doesn't. And he is unapologetically going to keep it that way. He just wants to save as many people as his hands can grasp. And when people call him a creepy brat because of his grandiose ideas and the way he just declares these things, honestly, I think they're right. I think that normal Subaru is already pretty delusional, but child Subaru saying the things that he says, that's pretty creepy. My personal prediction is that Jamal will come out of this alive and will meet back with Todd, because in this very volume they mention that werewolf pelt can be used to sneak around, and there is no way that was said randomly, there is no way that is not foreshadowing for my main man Todd. Todd the GOAT is coming back, and I refuse to believe otherwise. My man is coming back home with the wifey and go on a honeymoon and forget all about that creepy brat Subaru. Nobody likes him anyway. After we wrap up the business with Subaru's crew, the book switches perspective to Lupugana, the imperial capital that is infested with zombies, and there are so many tidbits of information to talk about here, so let's start with the very dysfunctional Segmunt family. Ceci has from the very beginning been strangely attached to Subaru and has taken a liking to him, and so even though it is clear that he can snap at any moment at any whim of his because he's the main character, he has been, up until this point in Arc 8, strangely collaborative and strangely supportive. He's not been very much the psycho that he can be. However, here we see for the first time that Ceci's whims can be very helpful but can also be adversarial. Not only does he not help Al, he puts him in even more danger to confirm his suspicion that Al has some sort of strange ability. And this is fascinating to me because out of the huge cast of ReZero with so many very intelligent characters, one of the few to notice that Al has some sort of ability is Ceci, the man who relies purely on instinct. He got to this conclusion with 0% brain, 0% knowledge, just 100% vibes, trust me bro. These eerily accurate instincts once again manifest when Ceci knows that he should probably not cut down all the zombies, and some people will say that's a bit of a plot convenience, and I understand where people are coming from, but I think for this character specifically, I think it makes sense, it fits the character, and even in universe it has an explanation that is further developed in this volume. The dude has in-universe main character syndrome, and that's part of what makes him so entertaining to read. One thing that greatly surprised me though was that by being in this child form, Ceci is actually beatable, sort of. We see this when he actually lost a leg against Balleroy. Reinhardt could never. Anyway, I think that this is very interesting. It changes the dynamic a lot. Even his deadbeat father comments on this, that he is weaker from what he was previously, so they show that Ceci is not as strong as he once was, and he can't just necessarily solo this entire conflict by himself. In a straight 1v1, Ceci is still arguably the strongest character in the capital, at least until Hannibal arrives, but I think that in a battle of attrition against the zombies who can revive endlessly, and also against long ranger characters like Balleroy who can just shoot him from afar and he can do very little about that, then I think that Ceci may face some struggle in this arc, which makes the arc a lot more interesting because obviously we want to see the drama, the intensity, the close fights. Stomps are cool, but not for this type of story and not for the part 2 of a climactic saga like this one. And then we had one of my favorite reveals in the entire series, and I'm being super serious, I loved it, thank God I didn't spoil this one. Somebody call Ceci Randy Orton because bro is literally listening to voices. And there's only two ways this can go, and to reiterate what I said in Arc 7, either the observers are a very real thing, in which case I think they will play into the endgame somehow perhaps, and also they're just here to watch Ceci do Ceci things, or number 2, they are actually not a real thing, this is just a bunch of mumbo-jumbo superstition, in which case Ceci is a legit schizo mental nutcase, and that option is somehow even more fun for me. Realistically though, I think the observers are very much a real thing in universe. I think the story puts way too much emphasis, even in this volume, on the stargazers for the observers to not be a real thing, but either way I think this contextualizes a lot of Ceci's personality and actions in a way that makes it so much more compelling. His cheery and oblivious personality is not so much endearing anymore as it's more horrifying, because it's his only escape against this endless stream of imperceptible voices just echoing in his head all the time. The only choice that he has is to be the main character, to entertain these people, whoever they are, whatever they're saying, because otherwise he will just give in to madness and just end it all. The sheer horror that is Ceci's life would lead any other character to collapse. Remember in Arc 4, even Subaru was going mad just from the voices of the trial, and Echidna had to snap him out of it, but Ceci has no one, he just has himself, and somehow he deals with it because he's the main character. And then you add into all of this that he likely had a very tough childhood with his horrible father, and you get the unbeatable monster known as Cecilus. And speaking of Ceci and his daddy, let's talk about Rowan. And listen, if you are a fan of Rowan, you may want to skip to the next timestamp, okay? That is all I'm going to say because I'm about to go in. Man, the author tried to make this parallel between Heinkel and Rowan as both being the fathers of the strongest, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but Heinkel is the much better father and much better human being. I hate Rowan. He's such a lame, irredeemable bum. He's an absolute bum. Like the British say, he's a waste man. See, I know my UK slang, what up? The first thing is Rowan got rid of all of Ceci's brothers because they were, checks notes, normal babies. At the very least, if he didn't want them, he could just abandon them. That's the bare minimum of a deadbeat father. Maybe they would have went to the orphanage. Maybe they would have been Flop and Medium's friends. This backstory alone was so psychopathic and unnecessarily evil, there's no actual good reason to do this, that it just soured me on the character completely, and I just hated him ever since. I am a certified Rowan hater. This guy is a bum. Then he doesn't even look at Ceci as his son, he looks at him as a means to an end, a means to achieve the summit of swordsmanship, and it would already be bad enough that this absolute bum is living vicariously through his son, but then he hasn't given up himself. This loser still hopes that he can achieve the summit of swordsmanship himself, and this is levels of delusion that make Regulus seem like a well-adjusted human being. Let's remind ourselves that this is the dude that got one-shot by Todd in Arc 7, and I love Todd, he's my goat, but let's be honest here, I've always said that I love him for the psychological element. Todd is not a strong character by ReZero standards. So Rowan may be stronger than the average human, but if he got done in by Todd, then that means he's not actually strong for ReZero standards. He's not on the tier of Garfield or Roswell or, God forbid, Ceci. Even Yorna, or should I say Iris, confirms this. Rowan was a terribly troublesome person. He was not weak, yet neither was he strong. If she was forced to put it into words, he would be the apex of the common man. This guy is such a certified bum that at the first strong opponent that he encounters, he voluntarily decides to turn into a zombie. This is crazy movement. This is bum behavior like I have never seen. And we haven't established this in ReZero yet, but in common zombie tropes, usually the revived person may be a copy of the person at its peak, for example, but the skill ceiling is capped. Once they are no longer alive, they cannot grow stronger. And if Arc 5 is any indication, it seems that the zombie form is slightly weaker than the normal living person. So what was this for? At least he has the self-awareness at the end to know that he's a bum, but it's so funny to me that the dude spends the entire volume yapping about becoming stronger and mastering the sword, and then he takes the easy way out at the first difficult problem. And then even his backstory, even his monologue started pissing me off at the levels of bummery that I have never witnessed. At one point he says that he never had a rival. He never met someone truly strong, so he could not grow. You never met anyone strong in Vollachia. In Vollachia. Dude, just wander into the Crystal Palace and ask Gauze to give you the business. Like, what cope is this? What lame excuses are these? This guy is the king of bums, the epitome of bums. He is the absolute legendary Archbishop of bummery. I just can't, man. I just can't. I don't think I've ever actively disliked a character more than Rowan in the entire ReZero series, because you guys know I'm not the biggest fan of the Gluttony siblings, but I don't really dislike them. I just think they're lame. They're not as interesting as the other archbishops, because also the competition, let's be honest, is pretty steep. Regulus, Betelgeuse, Capella, they're all great villains, so the Gluttony siblings sort of stand out because they're not that good. But this guy, I am a certified hater. I am preying on his downfall. Screw this guy, screw Rowan. I hope that Spica just eats him and sends him to the Netherrealm or wherever he's going. See, I'm rooting for Spica. This is how much I hate this guy. But you know who is not a bum? Al. Al is a real G, and in this volume we get to know a little bit more about his ability. Quick disclaimer, I started reading the web novel from Arc 7 onwards, so if any of this information was somehow revealed in the web novel for Arc 5, then my bad, I read the light novel version, so I did not know this information yet. It's been pretty clear since Arc 5, maybe even Arc 3, if you, like me, are also curious as to why Al knew Rum, that Al has some sort of time travel ability just like Subaru. In this volume, we get to see Al use his ability in much more detail from his point of view, and we discover that he can actually choose the save point, unlike Subaru, which is a very interesting application. Also, it seems that unlike Subaru's ability, which is tied to himself, Al's ability is tied to a location, which may explain if these locations have leftovers. It may explain what happened to Subaru in both the confrontation against Olbart in the Chaos Flame Palace and also in Gladiator Island. He wasn't actually using his own RBD, he was using the leftover of Al's ability. And it was hinted at the time that Subaru may have been using Al's ability, but Tappei wrote it beautifully, where you also had to give some possibility to the fact that Subaru was just turned into a child and it wasn't clear. Maybe it was RBD bugging out. We didn't know what the infantilization did to Subaru and his authorities. But now I think it's becoming clearer that yes, he was in fact using the leftovers from Al's matrices. If those were in fact the remnants of Al's ability, then it does raise the question, what are the limits of his ability? Is he just leaving leftovers all over the place? Do they just stay there forever? And in terms of time, it seems that at one point they say he updated his matrix by 10 seconds, so if he can set the location and the time, how does that work for older matrices? For example, if Al were to reset in Gladiator Island, would he go back years all the way to the events of X5? It's not quite clear to me, and I think that we will get to know this in further volumes to come. Al continues being one of the most fascinating characters in ReZero and a true anti-hero. While Subaru sacrifices himself for others, Al has no problem sacrificing others for his objectives. Al had no problem sacrificing Rowan, and neither would I, to be honest, as we've established Rowan is a bum, but he also sacrificed Heinkel, who is also from the Priscilla camp, so unlike the evil deeds that he did in Arc 5, this one, he knows Heinkel personally, so this felt deep. This was a cold move. Al wants Subaru to be a hero, but he does not want to live by those ideals himself. And this is a clash that is waiting to happen, and all that's left to see if it will be in Vollachia or later down in the story. Now, for my other notes, let's just run through them. First one is, I really like Groovy. I really like that guy. He's a foul mouth, just constantly spewing profanities. He has no filter, but he's quite an honorable character. In the middle of all of this, he's still a man fighting for, or should I say a raccoon, fighting for his empire. He's quite patriotic. He seems to do the right thing, and his interactions with Ceci are just glorious, because Ceci just doesn't care about anything seemingly besides himself, and Groovy takes his job very seriously. He is a professional. He wants to honor his status as a divine general. He wants to honor his empire, and he cares so much and Ceci cares so little that the dynamic is just glorious, especially because Groovy is also very temperamental, very angry, and will say whatever he feels the need to say, which is obviously very rude, but it makes me laugh. We keep getting developments on Yorna's story. It seems she has now reverted back to Iris, although it is not entirely clear what that means yet. It seems that Yorna still maintains her sense of self. She does not want to hurt anyone. She's not brainwashed or anything, although please hurt Rowan. Please hurt him a lot. I think it is now more and more evident that what maintains Yorna living in this planet, the curse of the Thorn King, is exactly that. It is a curse, and it is not pleasant for either party. And I still think that the endgame is Spica being able to free Yorna, which would also make things go full circle, since Yorna was one of the few that initially helped Spica. Regarding Eugard, I think that he's a tremendous villain, both in terms of power set and also visually speaking. From the illustrations, he looks super cool and menacing, and I think that him being a curse user and now having a sword that can cut curses, I think it is setting him up for a fight versus Halibel. Curse user versus curse user. I think it will be very epic. I'm looking forward to it, and let's be honest, the author sort of wrote himself into a corner here where he has some very strong players, and so he needs some very strong villains. So Halibel can just go up against anyone because he will just one-shot him. So he needs a strong opponent, and I think Eugard may be it. And at the end of the volume, Garfield saves Heinkel from Mesoreia, the dragon husk. Calling it a husk is a bit demeaning. In my town, we just call it Alzheimer's. I don't know what you guys do in the places you are from, but either way. Honestly, this matchup is super cool to see Garfield go fist to fist against a dragon. It's going to be super awesome, but I'll be honest, I do not want this matchup. Nah. Give me the three-peat. I want Emilia to get her rematch. I want Emilia to finally become an official Dragon Slayer. Emilia needs to finish this feud. You can't just pass it on to someone else now. I want Emilia versus the dragon. I want it bad. And the more I think about the possible matchups, I think that the author just has to pull up some new mega powerful enemies out of his pocket, because it just seems so unbalanced for the ReZero Avengers. I think they're just going to sweep it. You also have Roswell now, who is unleashed. He can now use magic. The dog is loose. Hopefully we'll get some answers in the next volume. Like I said, overall this volume was not as eventful as perhaps I wish it could be, storyline wise, but it was very character driven. It gave us a lot of info on the characters. I enjoyed it a lot, and it built a lot of hype for this confrontation to come. I think the Great Disaster is heating up, and I am eating good. Also, I want to emphasize that once again, unlike in Arc 7, I am very interested in pretty much all of the storylines coming into Arc 8. So I think Tappei has done a great job managing all of these concurrent storylines. I think it's all very interesting, and it's about to boil down, and I'm very eager to see it. So that was it for me today. Be sure to leave your thoughts about Volume 36 in the comment section below, and be sure to like, subscribe, and ciao!